In 1462, Vlad III did something that should have saved him. He rode north, toward Hungary, toward the one Christian king in the region who'd actually promised to help him fight the Ottomans. He needed allies. He needed money. He needed, honestly, just a place to stand. What he got instead was a cell. His name was Matthias Corvinus, King of Hungary, and, up until that point, Vlad's most important ally. The man who'd received papal funds specifically to support this exact war. And instead of using that money the way it was intended, he arrested the one man who'd actually been fighting. Why would an ally do that? That's most of this episode, honestly. But here's the part almost nobody talks about. To make the arrest look justified, to explain to the Pope, to explain to all of Europe why he'd locked up his own war hero instead of funding him, Corvinus needed Vlad to look like a monster. Not a little bit monstrous, unforgivably, irredeemably monstrous. So somebody wrote the pamphlets, lurid, exaggerated, printed on Gutenberg's brand new printing press and shipped across half of Europe. Most of what the world still believes about Vlad the Impaler.
Let's back up a little, because the context actually matters here. After the 1462 campaign, the Forest of Stakes, the Night Raid, the Ottoman Retreat, all of it covered in this channel's first episode, Vlad was in trouble. Big trouble. His brother Radu, backed by the Ottomans, was marching to take the Wallachian throne. Vlad didn't have the numbers to hold the country alone, so he did the only reasonable thing. He went looking for the ally who'd promised support in the first place. Matthias Corvinus wasn't just some random king. He was young, ambitious, and, crucially, he'd been given a serious amount of papal money specifically earmarked for a crusade against the Ottoman Empire. Vlad's war was supposed to be part of that crusade. So Vlad crossed into Hungarian territory expecting reinforcement. What happened next depends a little on which account you read, but the broad shape is consistent. Vlad was detained, then arrested outright, then held, for years, first somewhere near Buda, and later at Visegrad, a fortress up along the Danube. No trial, as far as any surviving record shows. No formal charge that historians can point to with real confidence. Just custody. Indefinite, unexplained custody of the one man who just handed the Ottoman Empire its most humiliating retreat in years. It doesn't add up. Not unless you ask a different question. Not why did Vlad deserve this, but what did Corvinus need to explain?
All. That's a problem. That's the kind of problem that gets kings in serious trouble with Rome. So he needed a story, a good one where locking up Vlad wasn't a betrayal of the crusade, it was a moral necessity. Vlad, in this new version of events, wasn't an ally who'd been abandoned. He was a monster too dangerous to support in the first place. And this is where it gets genuinely strange, because the timing lines up almost too perfectly with a piece of new technology, the printing press. Gutenberg's invention was maybe 20 years old at this point, still spreading across German territories, still novel enough that whoever used it well could shape opinion faster than anyone in European history had ever managed before. Pamphlets started appearing. German language, cheaply printed, wildly popular, describing Vlad's cruelty in increasingly grotesque detail. Numbers inflating with each new edition, stories getting more elaborate, more theatrical, less connected to anything resembling a documented event. Some of what's in those pamphlets probably has a kernel of truth. Vlad genuinely did use impalement as punishment, genuinely did build a reputation on calculated terror, and this channel has already covered real, documented instances of exactly that. But the pamphlets weren't reporting. they were building a narrative, on purpose, timed suspiciously well with a king who needed the world looking at Vlad's cruelty instead of his own broken promises. It worked. It worked so well that 400 years later, an Irish novelist would borrow fragments of this exact printed reputation, inflated, propagandized, only loosely connected to the actual historical record, and build the most famous horror character in the English language out of it. Vlad didn't just lose a war ally in 1462. He lost control of his own story. Permanently, as it turns out.
So what was it actually like? Sitting in custody, watching your own reputation get rewritten in print, with no real way to respond. Honestly, the historical record here goes quiet, in a way it doesn't for the dramatic battle years. We don't have Vlad's version of events. We don't have diary entries, personal letters, anything that tells us directly what he thought while all of this was happening. What we do have are fragments. The conditions of his imprisonment seem to have shifted over time, harsher in the early years, by most accounts, and gradually loosening as the political situation around him kept changing. Hungary's relationship with the Ottomans was never simple. Corvinus needed regional stability more than he needed a permanent prisoner rotting in a tower. And Vlad, whatever else you want to say about him, was still one of the more capable military minds in the region. A resource, if handled carefully, not just a liability. So the custody, over years, softened. Historians generally place Vlad at Visegrad for a significant stretch, and by most accounts, conditions there were considerably less brutal than a dungeon, closer, in later years, to restricted residence than to a punishing cell. Not freedom, but not nothing either. And somewhere in the middle of all that uncertainty, years without a throne, years with his name being turned into a monster on printed pages across German-speaking Europe, Vlad's situation took a turn nobody really talks about. He built a life. At some point during his captivity, Vlad married a woman named Ilona Szilágyi. Here's the detail that makes this genuinely strange. She wasn't some random noblewoman. She was King Matthias Corvinus' own cousin. The prisoner married into the family of the man who'd imprisoned him. Multiple historians read this as a deliberate political maneuver on both sides. For Corvinus, tying Vlad into his own family network meant a former enemy became, at least on paper, kin. Manageable, less of a wild card. For Vlad, it was very likely the only realistic path back toward any kind of political relevance at all. Around this same period, Vlad also converted to Roman Catholicism, a significant and politically loaded move for a ruler whose family and region had deep Orthodox Christian roots. Not necessarily a matter of personal faith, almost certainly, at least in part, a calculated act of political survival. The marriage produced children, sons, according to most accounts, though the historical record on exactly how many and what became of all of them is frustratingly thin, the way so much of this era is. Think about that for a second. The man history remembers almost exclusively through forests of impaled bodies and propaganda pamphlets calling him a monster, during this same stretch of years, was building a household, a marriage, a family inside the very political structure that had imprisoned him. It doesn't erase anything that came before it. It doesn't erase what came after either. But it complicates the flat, one-dimensional monster the pamphlets were selling. Because monsters generally don't get quietly rehabilitated into a royal family through marriage and years of patient political maneuvering. By the mid-1470s, the political winds had shifted enough. Ottoman pressure building again, Corvinus needing capable military leadership
more than he needed an old grudge. That Vlad's path back to Wallachia's throne became not just possible, but useful to the same king who'd locked him away over a decade earlier. In 1476, with Hungarian backing, Vlad rode back into Wallachia one final time. The throne he reclaimed that year would only last a matter of months. This channel has already covered how that story ends, and what may have happened to him after.
So here's the question this episode actually leaves you with. How much of what you think you know about Vlad the Impaler did you learn from history? And how much of it did you learn from a printing press being used deliberately to cover up a king's broken promise? It's an uncomfortable question, honestly, because it doesn't have a clean answer. Some of the cruelty was real, documented, verified, covered honestly on this channel already. But some of what built the legend wasn't history at all. It was 15th century damage control, printed at scale, at exactly the moment new technology made that possible for the first time. Vlad spent roughly a decade of his life as a prisoner, a political bargaining chip, and, without ever writing a word of it himself, the subject of the era's first real viral misinformation campaign. Somewhere in that decade, he also built a family, made a marriage work, politically if nothing else, waited, and when the door finally opened again, he walked back through it, one more time, into a story that was never fully his to control again. If you've been with this channel from the beginning, you know where this story goes next, and where it may have ended up 5 centuries later. If you're new, the forest of stakes, the empire that fled, the grave that took half a millennium to even start looking for, it's all right here on this channel. Every week, we go back into the true history behind the legend the world calls Dracula. The wars, the betrayals, and now, the ally who invented the monster to save his own reputation. Subscribe if you think you can handle how much of the truth was actually printed on purpose. We'll see you in the next Chronicle.